All right, everybody. So we're going to start off this ocean floor spreading and magnetic polarity questions. We're starting with number one. So number one says, which landmass, right, is moving northward with Australia as part of the same tectonic plate? All right. So we've learned what page on the reference tables, right, is going to talk about tectonic plates. So when I take a look, I see that it's on page 5, right? Now, however, if I look on page 4, it gives me the names of several more of these land masses, right? Whether it be continents or whether it be countries, right? And so I see that Australia is this piece of land right here. And we want to know what other country, right? What other landmass is moving northward as well. Well, when I look at that same area, automatically it tells me, right, Indian Australian plate. And so everywhere where you see like these symbols, these lines, these are plate boundary lines. And so basically what that means is that it's separating one plate from another. All right. And so what I'm noticing here, the Indian Australian plate, which gives away the answer, I know that India is located right where I circled. And how do I know that? Because when I scroll up, India is located in that same area. And so as Australia moves northward, right, I'm going to highlight it red, right? These arrows point the direction where it's moving. India, the landmass, moves northward as well. And so that's why my correct answer is going to be India. All right, number two, it says the Indian Australian tectonic plate is moving wheres. All right. So I'm gonna look. So the Philippine plate is mentioned, the Fiji plate is mentioned, the Pacific plate is mentioned, and the Antarctic plate is mentioned. So I'm going to highlight those four plates, okay? So the Philippine plate is located right here. I'm just going to circle it. Philippine plate is right here. The Fiji plate is located, I apologize, right here, right where this dot is. The Pacific plate is right here, this whole entire plate. And the Antarctic plate is this large plate right on the bottom. And so the question is saying the Indian Australian plate, I have to choose where is it moving and the correct option, right? So the Indian Australian plate is moving northward. How do I know that? Because look at the arrows, right? They're moving in this direction. The entire plate is moving in that direction. And so when I'm looking, my best answer, right, is going to be towards the specific plate, right? Because it can't be away from the Fiji plate because it's actually heading in that direction. So the fact that this plate is moving right towards the north and colliding with the Pacific plate right here, that's why the correct answer is going to be choice 3. Base your answer to the following question on the map below, which shows seismograph recording stations at locations A, B, and C. Location D is the earthquake epicenter. The distance from location A and B to this epicenter are given in kilometers. And the question says, how does the age of the ocean floor bedrock change as the distance east or west of location D increases? So the question is saying, as I move away from D, how does the age of the ocean floor, how does it change, right? How does the age change? Well, when I'm looking at the ocean floor where D is, this definitely looks like the picture of Africa. And this definitely looks like B looks like it's located in South America. All right. And A definitely looks like it's North America. I know my writing is horrible, but we're gonna make it. All right. So I know D is somewhere halfway in between them. So when I'm looking on page 5 of the reference tables, just to see where D is, right? North America is located here. South America is right here. Africa is here. And so D must be right here, right? This is where D must be, right? Somewhere on a mid-ocean ridge. So automatically, when I'm looking at my question, I know it's not on a trench, right? D is not on a trench, so I can cross out 3 and I can cross out 1 because it is on a mid-ocean ridge. Now, one of the things that we've learned in class, and let me zoom in more here. One of the things we learned in class is that new ocean floor is created right on the mid-ocean ridge. New ocean floor is created here. So that means what happens to the old ocean floor that was created, right? It gets pushed away from the mid-ocean ridge. That means the further you get away from the ridge, the older the ocean floor is going to be. The further you get away from the ridge, the older the ocean floor is going to be. All right. And so that's why the correct answer is that the age increases, which is choice 4. All right, number 4. Number 4 says the cross section below represents a pattern of magnetic field reversals preserved in the igneous bedrock of the oceanic crust east of the mid-Atlantic ridge. All right. And it says which cross section best represents the magnetic field pattern west of the mid-Atlantic ridge. So they gave us the pattern east of the mid-Atlantic ridge, and our job is to find out the pattern west to fill this in with one of these choices. All right. So what have I learned? If we take a look right in our notes, we've learned that the magnetic polarity, right, is symmetrical as new ocean floor changes, right? So if I see reverse polarity starts off here, right, then that means that the reverse polarity would start off on the other side too. All right. You see how it's completely symmetrical, right? we have dark, light, dark moving to the right, and we have dark, light, dark moving to the left. So it has to be completely symmetrical, all right? So therefore, I'm just going to start off. If I started off, and let me go ahead and zoom even more. Give me a second to zoom in even more. Here we go. So if I started off with long dark, short white, short dark, long white, right? Then that means that my pattern has to be similar, right? From the ridge, long dark, right? Here we go. Short white, short dark, long white. And the last pattern we see here right before 40 is long dark. So long dark. All right. So the option that shows whatever pattern that's happening to the right, the same pattern has to occur directly to the left. So if I see dark, light, dark, light, dark, then moving to the right, it should be dark, light, dark, light, dark. All right. If I see long, short, short, long, long, then that means I should see long, short, short, long, long. And so the option that shows the correct choice to substitute would be choice 1. Number 5, it says base the answers to the following questions on the map below, which shows the tectonic plate boundaries near the East African Rift. Arrows show relative tectonic plate movement. A region of Africa is crosshatched. And it says, which diagram best represents the polarity of the magnetic field preserved in the ocean floor bedrock found on both sides of the mid-Indian ridge, right? So we know once again that the magnetic polarity is going to change, but the pattern moving from the center to the right has to be equal of the same pattern moving from the center to the left. So that's the key thing. You always have to start at the center, always start at the center, and then see if the pattern when I'm moving to the right is equal to the pattern that I'm moving to the left. So as I'm looking, all right, when I see one, oh, let me change the color. When I see one, I see white, gray, white, gray from the center. So that means on the left side, I should see the same pattern starting from the center. White, gray, white, gray. And that's why the correct answer is choice 1. You see choice 2 starting from the center. To the right, I start off with gray, but to the left, I start off with white. That means it's incorrect. Same thing is here. I started off with gray for choice 4, and to the left, I start off with white, and we see the same thing for choice 3. I started off with white to the right, and I started off with gray to the left. So you always have to start from the middle, and the pattern should be symmetrical. All right, number 6. Number 6 says the diagram below represents a pattern of normal and reverse magnetic polarity and the relative age of the igneous rock composing of ocean floor on the east side of the mid-Atlantic ridge. The magnetic polarity of the bedrock on the west side of the ridge has been deliberately left blank. So it is going to be our job to fill in this blank right here. Now it says, which diagram best shows the magnetic pattern and relative age of the igneous bedrock on the west side of the ridge? Okay. So number 1, right, the pattern should be exactly the same. So if it's increasing age to the right from the ridge, it should also be increasing age on the left as well too. All right. Now, and I'm going to zoom in more. Let's look at the pattern that has to fit. If I started off and I see gray, black, gray, black, right? Then that means that my pattern should also start gray, black, gray, black. All right? It has to be completely symmetrical. Starting from the middle and moving to the right should be equal when you start from the middle and move to the left. So the option that best shows that is going to be choice 1. All right, you see how I started off with gray as my first, the first one, right? That means I start off with gray to the left as my first one too. That's why the correct answer is choice 1. All right, number 7, it says crustal formation, which may cause the widening of an ocean, is most likely occurring at the boundary between the blank. So one thing that we've learned, right, when we get new crust forms when the plates are actually moving away from each other, right? When the plates are moving away from each other, this is also known as a divergent plate boundary. All right. So keep that in mind when the plates are moving away from each other. So between these 4, I have to check which one are the plates moving away from each other. All right. So Let me identify. So first you have the African plate and the Eurasian plate. All right. African plate and the Eurasian plate. When I look at here, right, African plate, Eurasian plate, this is the boundary between them. When I look at my key, it's a complex or uncertain plate boundary. All right. So it can't be that. When I look at option 2, and you can look on your paper, it says Pacific plate and Philippine plate. All right, Pacific plate and Philippine plate. All right, look at this boundary that I see right here, and you'll notice that this is a convergent plate boundary where the arrows are coming towards each other, right? And that makes sense. If you take a look, right, you see the arrows right here, right? The Philippine plate, that lets me know that it's moving in this direction, right? Just because of the symbols. All right. Number 3, it says Indian Australian plate and Antarctic plate. Indian Australian plate is here. Antarctic plate is right here. Look at the arrows in between. They're separating away from each other. And that also shows a divergent plate boundary. And that's what we were looking for. And so the correct answer is choice 3. All right, the map below, number 8, the map below shows some tectonic plate boundaries near South America and Africa. Letters A, B, C, and D represent locations on Earth's surface, right? Africa and South America. Which location most likely has the youngest bedrock? Now, these symbols I see here, these symbols look very similar because when I look on page 5, these symbols are associated with arrows spreading outward, right? So that lets me know that at a divergent plate boundary, new crust is being formed. Remember we said on the last question, at a divergent plate boundary, new crust, right? New crust is being formed right here. All right. And so if new crust or new bedrock is being formed right there, right? So whichever location is closest to the ridge is going to have the youngest bedrock. And so that's why the correct answer is C. C is closest to the ridge, right? To the point where plates are separating from each other. So that means the youngest bedrock is going to be right here. As you move away from the ridge on either side, as you move away from the ridge, the age of the bedrock gets older. And so the correct answer is C. Number 9, which geologic feature is composed of the youngest crustal bedrock? We just said, right? New crust forms at a mid-ocean ridge. That's where new crust forms. And that's why one of the mid-ocean ridges we see here is choice 2, a mid-Atlantic ridge. All right? So number 9 is choice 2. Number 10, the diagram below shows the magnetic polarity preserved by minerals within the bedrock of the oceanic crust near the mid-Atlantic ridge. Letters A, B, C, and D represents locations in the ocean floor bedrock. The most recently formed rock is found at location. Well, we got to ask ourselves, which location is closest to the ridge? Which location is closest to the ridge? That is where you're going to get the youngest bedrock. The youngest bedrock you're going to find at the ridge. And so that's why the best answer, letter C, is the closest to the ridge. And that's why letter C is going to be the correct answer. And number 11, it says, base their answers to the following question on the map of the mid-Atlantic ridge shown below. Points A through D are locations on the ocean floor. Line XY connects locations in North America and Africa. And it says samples of ocean floor bedrock were collected at points A, B, C, and D. Which sequence shows the correct order of the age of the bedrock from oldest, keyword, from oldest to youngest, from oldest to youngest. All right. Now they tell us something very interesting right here, that this line represents a mid-Atlantic ridge. It is a mid-ocean ridge, right? Why is that important? Because in a mid-ocean ridge, new crust forms here. New crust forms on this line. And that means the older crust is farther away from the line. So our friends, I gotta ask myself, which letter does it seem like is farthest away from this line, the mid-Atlantic ridge? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to number them, right? I'm going to number them. So we're going to start off. The farthest letter from the mid-Atlantic ridge is A. So I'm going to label that 1. You know what? Let me change the color a little bit. Let me flip it up a little bit, switch it up. Okay. So 1. Then the second farthest point from the ridge is D, which is 2. The third farthest point from the ridge is 3. And the most recently, the youngest point that is on the ridge is 4. So remember, we're ordering it from oldest to youngest, not youngest to oldest. So we have to start with the points that are farthest away. And so that's why when I'm looking, the correct answer is going to be choice 2. Thank you so much for watching. And by all means, I pray that you guys have a wonderful, blessed day. And until next time, peace.